It's time for Supply Chain Now. Broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome back to today's show. Great show lined up as we continue our Logistics with Purpose series here, powered by our dear friends over at Vector Global Logistics. Now, what is this series all about? Well, it's simple. We spotlight leaders and organizations that are in some way, shape, or form, they're changing the world, just like Vector. And so stay tuned as we look to not only share inspiring stories, but also we look to increase your supply chain leadership IQ. Quick programming note, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. All right, so I'm going to welcome in the whole gang. We've got a talented slew of co-hosts with us here today. Of course, starting off with Greg White, serial supply chain tech entrepreneur and trusted advisor. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm looking forward to this. Exciting.
We are too.
Always exciting.
Agreed. This is one of our favorite series for sure. Enrique Alvarez, managing director with Vector Global Logistics. Enrique, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much, Scott. Great seeing you both again. And it's great to have Jeremy today. It's going to be exciting.
We've got a home run guest. Absolutely. Look forward to diving into Jeremy's story. Lisa Rodriguez, sales associate with Vector Global Logistics. Lisa, how you doing?
Hey, how are you, Scott? Everything is great. Thank you so much for inviting us.
You bet. Great to have you back. I think last time we connected was on the which episode was that? Was that the Books for Africa episode may have been, or but anyway, regardless.
No, I think so. Yeah, with Nicole.
Nicole with Hungry. I bet that was the episode. But regardless, great to have you back. Love the work that the Vector Global team does, whether it's all their work with the nonprofits or really in general moving the supply chain industry forward. So great to have you back, Elisa. All right. So
thank you.
With no further ado, let's welcome in our esteemed featured guest we have here today, Jeremy Newhouse, Senior Vice President of Operations for Matter, M-A-T-T-E-R, which is a global nonprofit that's on a mission to move people forward by eliminating barriers to a healthier life. Love that. It can mean so much, and we're going to find out exactly what's behind that mission statement. Good morning, Jeremy.
Hey, well, good morning. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
You bet. We've been looking forward to this episode, and we're looking forward to learning a lot more about you and Matter. And as we like to do, let's learn more about Jeremy Newhouse first. So, Jeremy, tell us about where you're from, and you got to give us the goods on your upbringing a little bit.
I could say I probably had a unique upbringing. Born in California, but pretty much raised here in Minnesota, right here in Minneapolis, where I live today. But my parents were hippies. And they had traveled the world and were Montessori teachers, and they ended up homeschooling me and all my four other siblings. So I've been homeschooled all the way up to the university level, so it was quite a unique creative blend in our family. My parents being Montessori teachers, my dad being an entrepreneur, home businesses, and so I actually started my first business at home when I was 6 years old. My brother was 7, and we were on the front end of the organics movement, I guess you could say. My dad brought in approximately about 100 tons of organic wheat from Canada.
Wow.
And it was stored, and we unloaded it, and we would distribute it to people to help them make their own homemade bread that was organic.
Wow.
So
that is.
My brother and I decided to start a business, or with my dad's encouragement, and we ended up making 50 loaves of bread a week and selling them when we were 6 and 7.
Bringing that forward to the current environment, we've seen a resurgence in folks baking their own bread, right?
Yeah. It's happened. I've made, because I still do. I now have I guess a 9 and a 6-year-old, and they're starting to make their bread and talking to the neighbors and so forth. And so we've traded bread recipes, and we've eaten their bread. We've given them our bread. So
Love it.
It's a great neighborly bridge.
Yeah, very cool.
And I love the entrepreneurial lessons that you and your brother learned from your father early on in life. I'm sure that those were critical lessons learned.
No, he made us keep track of all the ingredient costs, the electricity. I mean, he factored in everything. We had a spreadsheet, or not spreadsheets back then, just handwritten notes on what the line items were of the cost of goods sold, and then what was the net profit and what we had to pay to suppliers. So that kind of probably sparked in me a fascination with business.
I love that.
And then as I got into high school, I helped my dad. Kind of self-taught myself a little bit of coding and worked on a software program to help my dad with an inventory management system for his small home business. And that's I just got kind of discovery and trying new things and things that have a marketplace application, I guess, is really
wow.
interesting.
Love that. All right. So let's, before we get bring Lisa back in, she's got some questions around your professional journey. One quick question. You mentioned you were homeschooled just prior to university. Where'd you go to college?
Yeah, so it's kind of a disconnect because I went right from homeschool right into a small Bible school, and then went had a shift, and really Africa had a part of that, living in Africa for a while, and shifted and went and instead I got my MBA. So that's where it's a little bit of a story about how that happened, but yeah, that was kind of where it went.
Well, can you give us a Reader's Digest version real quick?
Okay, so I lived in Congo for a year. My undergrad was in Divinity. Had every intention of going into social work, missionary work, and living in Congo for a year, working in a school and in a church, changed my perspective about what the greatest needs were in underserved communities. And I saw the biggest needs that were confronting me on a daily basis. I'd walk to school and teach in the classes and get to know my students in their homes. It was economic needs. And that was just stood straight out in front, that the economic crises that they were facing on a daily basis was insurmountable by any stretches of common of what they were able to handle. And so that's where I guess I thought that in that year that I was living there, I came up with the idea of microfinance. This is kind of, that wasn't pre-internet, so I guess I can't even give myself that excuse, but there was no microfinance happening in Congo at the time. So it was kind of my original idea for Congo, but now I really thought of, if we could give to these individuals in the schools and their parents. They were working for basically $1 a day, and if we could give them a small loan so they could get a little bit of capital, help start a home business, much like my dad did, I could see tremendous change happening in families. And so I became very passionate about this idea, and then ended up getting connected with a microfinance organization a couple of years later, when I realized that actually was a term and actually had been going on quite successfully for decades and decades, just not in Congo. Although it came to Congo 6 months after I left. And anyways, the director of that MFI, he told me, you know what we'd really need in nonprofit, if this is your heart, this is what you want to do and help people with economic relief and stability, you need to, don't go get an MPA or a Master of Public Policy or something like that. Go get an MBA. Yeah. That's what you're going to need to really help people.
Well, thank you for sharing the rest of the story.
Yeah,
it's very intriguing.
Fantastic.
Yeah. All right. So Lisa, let's bring you back in here. Let's talk a little more about Jeremy's professional journey.
Yes, Jeremy, please tell us about your professional journey prior to current role. How did you shape your worldview?
Yeah, I mean, my worldview was shaped from a young age of helping people, and that's really been my heart. So I guess I have my parents to thank for that. It went right into college, and then right from the reason why I chose grad school, like I mentioned, was I wanted to help nonprofits. I wanted to help people who wanted to see real change in the world. And so that all those steps involved in that reflected where I guess my upbringing and some of the decisions made. So I had a chance to go work at a university teaching. Actually, it was a university-run micro loan program, the first in the Midwest. There was a handful of other schools out east that had started one, but we were running them, and they were using the MBA students as business school students to work with local entrepreneurs who needed help with their business plan, needed help refining some of their business theory. But they had practical experience that they were also able to help the MBA students. So it was a highly successful program. It's still going on today, and several other schools around the country, business schools, have adopted that model.
Love it. All right. So one last question there as it relates to your journey and leading up to Greg is going to ask more about Matter. Was there what was a key role before you joined the Matter organization?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think directing a program, getting it launched off the ground at the university level, it was how to think from a 40,000 foot view and really see from soup to nuts how to actually get something started and finish it and design it. So that was very helpful in what I do today in designing programs and helping projects get off the ground. Yeah, there's others. I mean, I lived in Tanzania for a while doing social enterprise, working with community leaders. That was very impactful. Figuring out the challenges of how difficult it is. It's you can map it out on paper, and then how it actually works out is something entirely different.
That's true.
So true. That is so true. So, well, I know Enrique's a big fan. So tell us what makes Matter, or really what makes Matter work. So give us an idea of your model.
So we've had about a pivot about 7 years ago. We changed our name to Matter. We've been around for 20 years, but we were Hope for the City. And then we pivoted to Matter. And I guess we really started recognizing what we wanted to communicate through that name was that it was the message that you matter. So that's what we established 6-7 years ago when we did a name change. And it was the idea that irrespective of your geographic, your religion, your social economic status, you matter. You're here for a reason. You've given eyes and ears. You see your community. You know what you need to do to help. And we want to listen to those ideas. We want to hear those ideas. We want to help you refine those ideas. And ultimately, we want to help you implement those ideas so you can create change in this world. And so how that happens practically at Matter is we take on big challenges that we see that are happening in the world that we feel like we can have a part to play in. And one of the challenges, there's 3 right now that we're focused on for our 3-year strategic plan. One is access to health. So this has been obviously a long part of Matter's history, even before the name change, but we're still disturbed by the fact that less than 50% of the world's population have adequate access to health facilities. That's not right. It shouldn't happen that way. So we are on a mission to get these hospitals that we engage with proper medical equipment that they need to service so they can have a proper facility for people to go and get care. Another big challenge that we're running through is that this is the first generation in the US that is projected to not have a shorter life expectancy than the previous generation. And a lot of that has to do with non-communicable diseases, and the shorter life expectancy oftentimes correlates with nutrition and health outcomes. So our history back as Hope for the City was a food bank. Now we've pivoted to how to teach nutrition through healthy food. So we distribute Matter boxes that go into communities that have procured intentional food that has recipes, video instruction, how to prepare food, how to shop for food, how to provide nutrition for your family.
A health bank, if you will. Wow, that's a really valuable service, and probably, I'm guessing, stemmed from some of your experience in Africa, having recognized the shortages and issues with certain people's being able to get healthy food and water and things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, nutrition is one of the primary building blocks of a healthy life, and when that's missing, you're not gonna have the right outcomes that you're looking for, irrespective of whether that's in Africa or here in Minneapolis. So
yeah,
that's one of those building blocks of health that we feel like we have a part to play in, and it's been very, very it's had to be out of the box thinking, and we started as, like you said, a food bank, and we recognized that the food that we were distributing out in the community, the ones that we were getting in surplus and from the overstock and supply, was actually not healthy food. And so we had to look in the mirror and say, 6-7 years ago, are we doing more harm than good? And we had to come to the conclusion that, wow, I think actually we might actually be contributing to the problem, not helping it. And so we had to just stop it. We got rid of our freezers and refrigerators and all that whole program and just redesigned it. If we could imagine a perfect distribution platform, what would it look like? And we started imagining, well, it would look like not just random food, it would look like intentional procured food. It would look like we actually have this in a one box that somebody could then take a recipe and learn how to prepare food, and then have digital content that helps support that. And that's what we dreamed up. And then through the help of a lot of collaborators and companies that bought into that vision, we started implementing it.
So Jeremy, can you give us an example? I mean, give us an example of what you might have been distributing before and what you shifted to in terms of what you're providing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, as a food bank, you get everything from canned pallets of soda pop to chips to things with high preservatives, high sodium, high fat content. You just get the random mix of whatever. And then you try to distribute this, and we'd have food. We'd actually have a pickup services where smaller food banks would come and pick up stuff, and it was just the randomness of it all. Was sometimes you'd have this great, a set of strawberries, great, and then what does that have to do with tortillas that you got, and just trying to build, just the randomness of it was how are we really impacting the health outcomes, and how are we helping nutrition? And so that's where we had to say, no, let's actually design healthy, let's procure intentionally low sodium, high fiber, let's procure intentional food that actually can be made into a recipe, so somebody can learn how to prepare food and how to shop healthily.
So you raise the bar from simply feeding to then nourishing, and now the kind of age-old tradition, right? Give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime.
Absolutely, that's our goal. Our goal is to work ourselves out of a business in that sense. We don't intend the Matterbox to be there for life for somebody. We want to lower the intimidation bar of that you can prepare healthy food, that you can shop for healthy food, that you know what that looks like and what it tastes like. And a lot of times, unfortunately, that's where our biggest emphasis is with kids, because we discovered that whatever kids like, parents end up doing. Right. So, and we discovered it's also very hard to teach kids to try something healthy, because typically the first experience a child has with healthy food is a terrible experience. It's usually some badly prepared vegetable, and they're like, "No, I don't want this. Give me my Cocoa Puff."
Spinach. It's usually something like
Brussels
spinach,
sprouts.
Right?
Come on.
All right. Well, Jeremy, so we know what your title is, right? Vice President of Operations, right? But tell us what your role really is. What does that mean, and what do you do every day at Matter?
Well, yeah, so we're a small nonprofit, so we have a lot, and for that you end up wearing a lot of hats.
Right.
So I guess what I really enjoy doing is working on the projects. When I can work on a hospital project that goes from the design all the way to the final implementation, and even the delivery of helping them succeed at their delivery of health service, kind of the last mile solutions. That's really fun to do, to see that whole, to design the plan and then actually see it to fruition. Those are enjoyable, rewarding experiences. But and then you have the not so enjoyable ones. So you get a broad mix of what you end up doing, but that the variety, I think, is what I love too. So I don't know how well I do at doing just one thing all the time. So I spend a lot of time in the finances as well, and on the board reports of the financial positions of what we're trying to do.
Great. Just out of curiosity, how do you distribute these days?
So it depends on the medium, what we're trying to do. So in the food space, in the nutrition space, it depends on what that is going to be. So in a developing context, it could mean an agriculture project where we're distributing tractors and implements. It could mean that we're doing relief meals, where we have some of the largest relief meal NGOs here in Minneapolis that are based here. So we distribute that food to the right projects, to the right hospitals that have malnutrition wards. So that'll be, we've worked with Vector a lot on supply chains around that. We worked with Vector years ago on a famine relief, where we ended up shipping, I think it was close to 11 million meals to Somalia during a famine that they were having. And we got the whole Minneapolis community behind it with a lot of other great NGOs and partners. But yeah, they packed all that food, and then we ended up shipping all that food to Somalia for that famine relief. And then locally it could look totally different. It could be, we have, for the Matter boxes, we have companies come in. We procure the food intentionally, as they actually pay for the food. So the companies are covering the cost of the food that they're going to be packing. They pack it, then we distribute that through our localized local distributors who are putting that food right into the communities of need.
Awesome. Wow, that's fantastic. Well, you mentioned Vector, so I got to ask Enrique, first of all, we're always thankful that you bring us great organizations like this that are doing such great things for humanity. And your part, of course, we find tremendously valuable in leveraging and facilitating and even moving some of these goods around. But tell me what what kind of draws you to Matter? Why do you feel like we ought to hear from Jeremy and his organization?
Yes, no, well, first and foremost, thanks to Jeremy and his team, not only him for being in the episode today, but just for like the, I guess, dedication and commitment towards helping others that they bring to the industry and the world. And it's just really refreshing to work with people like him. It's, you asked me about what we kind of admire about Matter the most, and it's just, they're just good people in general. It's a good team. They're laid back, honest, committed, hardworking. They're passionate about others and giving back, and they're not afraid to say things the way they are, which is something that is kind of rare these days. And I kind of admire about their organization. If they can do something, they'll say it, and it's easy. And we'll try to work through the different challenges together, as opposed to just trying to selectively give information, right? So as a teamwork goes, we value our partnership with them. And when it comes to the one part's the logistics, one part's the moving the containers from point A to point B, and the other that we really are very excited about is they really just inspire us. So they're just pushing us to be better. And Elisa works, and Eduardo, who unfortunately wasn't able to join us today for personal reasons and other things that he had to do. But it's just fun working with them. And I'll let Elisa tell a little bit more about that because she works more on a day-to-day basis. But it's really working with good people helps you see the bigger picture, helps you keep your company and myself grounded, and just keeps me keeps me trying to do better every day, right? So if you wake up and you have a couple of shipments and it deals with helping someone in Africa or trying to save people from starving or nutrition or anything of the things that they do, it's easier to just get through the day.
Yeah,
because you got a really good motivation.
That's a really good point.
So clearly Matter is made up of good people, but what I'm gathering from pre-show conversations, this conversation, is good people with purpose that are on a mission, that are taking action to, much like Vector's been doing, change the world, right, and impact others. And as Jeremy put it plainly, work themselves out of business. I love that. And I also love going upstream and identifying root cause rather than put Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid. And look, it's important. Band-Aids are important, right? It's how we can kind of give ourselves time to figure out root cause for some of these deep challenges we have. But I love the root cause approach. Elisa, before we kind of broaden the conversation, is there anything you'd like to comment on, your involvement with Matter and why you admire the organization?
Yeah, I want to say thank you to you and all the team of Matter, because as Enrique said, it's really a motivation to wake up every day and start working with your team. And when we receive a new confirmation order, it's exciting to think that all the products, and even if it's medical supplies or meals, it's exciting to think that everyone who needs it will receive it. So it's really amazing to work with a company who do that. So I just want to say thank you.
Sounds very rewarding work, Elisa. You really gratifying to be a part of it, huh?
It's a little bit of changing the world every single day, right? That's cool.
All right. So with that said, and you know, all of us here on this interview are all big fans of how supply chain can certainly change the world and make it a better place. And that might sound cheesy, but I believe it. I believe it, and we see it every day. All right, Enrique. At this point, we want to kind of broaden the conversation out. We want to pick Jeremy's brain on other things that are taking place across global supply chain. So go right ahead.
Now, a quick question for you, Jeremy. And again, we're living historical times, right? At multiple levels. We were fighting a pandemic. Now we're fighting systemic racism. And there's so many things in our country and in our communities that they just seem to be falling apart. I don't know if it's one thing or the other. So how do you, as someone in charge of keeping operations running and keeping logistics going with everything that's going on, and including you having to go to work in St. Paul, and you just mentioned before we started this conversation that the riots actually took a toll on the city and the people. How do you feel about all this, and how do you then deal and cope with that so that your team continues to be as efficient as they possibly can, fighting all these different challenges at the same time?
No, thanks for the question. You know, I want to echo what Scott said. Like, supply chain absolutely has an impact in humanity and an impact in making the world a better place. So that's what we really see. Our vision and our mission is to uphold the arms of our partners who are on the front lines. And unfortunately, you know, this last couple of weeks here in Minneapolis, tragedy hit, and we're in shock as a community. Injustice was done by the police to innocent people, an innocent Black man that did not deserve to die, and he did. And that has created a disruption and anger and frustration that ended up resulting in some devastation that happened in our community. And so what we're, you know, how do you impact that? Well, our response is going to be through the food impact. Right now, that's what we're going to be focusing our efforts on, and trying to. Unfortunately, 3 grocery stores got burned down in that community, so there's access to food insecurity is going to be an ongoing challenge. And we want to figure out our part to play with the community leaders and building up a message that love can conquer hate. And we want to have an impact there. So that's taking a lot of coordination. Like, to make that actually happen, easy to say. To make that actually happen, it's taking. We got to talk to our suppliers, from the food companies to the companies, the local companies that are going to help support the food, pack the food, and then actually end up distributing the food. So it's all logistics to make those beautiful intentions happen. It just takes nothing but logistics to actually make it happen.
On the international front, Jeremy, I mean, you're also, and I'm aware that I know that you guys have been trying to procure some PPE products internationally as well, and you've sent a lot of products COVID-19 related. Could you tell us a little more about what you're doing on that front?
Yeah, for sure. So our hospital clinic program is a medical reuse program. So we get things in donation from hospital suppliers and manufacturers. They have their own supply chain challenges. So we become an outlet for things when they're upgrading or changing systems or manufacturers. So in last year, we rescued about a little over 1 million pounds of medical supplies and equipment that would have gone into landfills. We find that, we sort it, we refurbish it, and we end up getting that to hospitals and communities that need. So that's the international model that's been going on. Many organizations, good organizations, do something similar to that. What we found with COVID was that the supply chains got inverted. So we were normally getting things from hospitals and manufacturers of PPE and equipment, and then we, of course, find the right use for it down the supply chain line. And what happened was we got calls from the same hospitals, the same manufacturers that donated us the equipment, saying, "Do you have any of that left? Can you give that back to us? Our supply chains were disrupted. We need to now invert the supply chain and get that stuff back." And so we were able to help about 22 to 25 hospitals nationally here in our community, and in New York and in Iowa and surrounding states around Minnesota, that we were able to get them back. We ended up getting around 500,000 masks and gloves back to the hospitals that needed them desperately. So that was an interesting, change of what took place through COVID, and supply chains got inverted.
So let's continue along those lines. And when you really look broadly across global supply chain, Jeremy? Is there anything else really, whether it's a challenge or whether it's an innovation or a technology or maybe even from a leadership standpoint? Is there anything else that really you've been keeping your finger on the pulse of here lately?
Well, what happens with supply chain when you have crisis is that supply chains get disrupted. And so not only did it get inverted, but what we've seen before in other crises, and we're starting to see this just on the front end of this now, is that, the classic inventory bullwhip effect of supply chain. So you have increased, in these swings of inventory that happen in response to a crisis through the customer's demands. And then it just, it has effects up the supply chain that increase. So what we typically see is, and we saw this after Ebola, for example, 6 years ago when Ebola hit, there was massive ramp up in masks and gloves and PPE, and then the blow up effect in supply chains caused all those orders to increase all the way up the supply chain, so that they now came kind of crashing down, and then we had a warehouse full of masks and gloves, probably that we took about 3 years to distribute all that. And to process all that, because the hospitals couldn't hold it. So you get those classic bullwhip effects, and we're already starting to see with the ramp up of medical equipment and supplies, we can see on the horizon that as COVID dies down, there's going to be this massive flux again, where we're going to be loaded with supplies and equipment, which is going to create its own logistical challenges for our limited space and what we need to do to help.
Yeah, great point there. Of course, we've all heard, if we've heard anything about toilet tissue in the first 6 months of 2020, we have certainly heard as much about the bullwhip effect. And, I kind of say that tongue in cheek, but one of the great things that we talk about every show, it seems like these days, is that the amount of awareness, the challenges, one of the silver linings here is the consumers' heightened awareness of why global supply chain works and how it works and why certain things take place. That's a great silver lining to all these challenges. One other thing I want to maybe get you to respond to a bit, Jeremy. Just earlier this morning, Greg and I had the good fortune of spending some time with Dominique Zwinkels, who is with People That Deliver, which is affiliated with UNICEF, and her friend and colleague, Jenny Froome, with SAPIX. And of course, they're doing a lot of work on Africa, much like some what you're referencing, and of course, a lot of work that Vector does. And I learned this new phrase that evidently is a real thing in those that are in international programs, is no product, no program. Mm-hmm. And of course, as the lover of all things supply chain and my lens, I listen through that phrase through, it's very clear. If we can't deliver what it is we're delivering, then nothing happens. So how does that, how does that sound to you? And is that something y'all kind of rally around too?
Absolutely. I mean, without that, you can't do anything. You can have good feelings about something, but without something to handle, to actually be able to help, no product, no deliver is no program is the right thinking to have. And I think you even have to broaden that out a little bit more. This crisis was a medical crisis, COVID was, and you're starting to see that, the need for PPP and all that. But it also disrupts many other things. So what we saw also, it's almost like I've seen this movie before thing when Ebola happened. In many of these developed and fragile economies, when there is a medical crisis, the secondary effects can be bigger than the primary crisis. So the secondary effect of COVID is disruption of food relief and food security and food channels. And so we've never gotten more requests from our Africa partners for food in this last 3 months than we've ever had in our history as an organization. So yes, the immediate focus is on the supply of medical needs, but actually we've had more requests for food than medical from our Africa partners. So it's just like the secondary effects can actually sometimes be bigger and more harmful. And that was the case with Ebola as well. The malnutrition and the suffering from food insecurity was in many cases, in many countries, worse than the effects of Ebola.
Hey, real quick, Greg, I know you're going to make sure folks can connect with Jeremy and Matter momentarily. But Greg, do you ever feel like we're a bee, and as we go from flower to flower or podcast conversation to podcast conversation, it's little snippets that stick between our ears and it spills right over into the next conversation? There's so many common threads.
It is, right? I mean, there are so many common threads, and it comes from the fact that we're trying to solve problems in a very using a very similar platform, that being supply chain, right? So yeah, I mean, I was thinking of exactly that phrase just before you said it, right? No product, no program, and how poignant that particular discussion is. And Jeremy, you added to that perfectly all the good intentions and all the good efforts and all of the preparation and initiatives don't matter unless we deliver, right? And that's, that's such an important part. But yeah, you're right. It's amazing how often these things tie together.
Yep.
Well, so let's talk about how people can reach out to you. Obviously, they can go to matter.ngo, your website. How else can people reach you or reach the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the website, they can reach us on Twitter, on Facebook, it's all matter_NGO is the best way to find us on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. And of course, our website, I guess if they wanted to engage right now, obviously Minneapolis is the epicenter of this crisis that is spreading, of injustice that is spreading around the world and needs to be addressed. And so our response is food. And what we can do to help these communities that are hurting at the moment. So if they went to our website, they could just scroll down and see there's one in there called COVID response, and also for helping pack food. So they could easily do that. It's $100, and they get a box of food that they then assemble into these Matter packs, and they can either distribute that locally or ship them back to us, and we distribute them here in Minneapolis. So that's an easy way. I think of another one if they know of a company or an organization that has product either in the medical or food space that we could have a conversation with them about donating to some of this work. I'm always looking to get more engaged with great companies that could make a big difference. And then I think lastly, just the message that you matter. Like, you have eyes and ears. You can see what's needed in your communities and in the places that you travel and work. And don't think that's somebody else's job. Our mission is to help empower you to go make a change. And we want to listen to your ideas. We want to help you refine those ideas, and ultimately, if we can, we want to help you implement them.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that. And I bet you're going to get some outreach as well. So, and you talked about how you're addressing not just the immediate crisis in Minneapolis, but also some of your COVID-19 initiatives. And I know, Enrique, you and the team, Lisa and the team at Vector have an initiative around COVID. Can you share a little bit of that with us also?
Yes, of course. When we saw the pandemic coming from the very beginning in China. And so we started shipping some masks from Mexico to China back in November. And so we've been following this worldwide crisis, from China to our friends in Italy, which we also helped. And when it hit the US, we decided to launch this new task force and really try to mainly do two things. One, cut the middlemen, because we believe that this has become like a mess, is the summary of it. But it's really just inefficient, corrupt, shady industry. And it's not helping anyone close deals quickly enough for PPE to go to the hands of line workers and first responders and people that really, really need them, right? There's just brokers have brokers now. So there's just everyone's trying to broker. So our first thought was, we have the contacts in Asia, we know agents, we have the sourcing. Let's just try to cut the middleman and try to help people get this fast. The other thing is just helping as many organizations as we possibly can. So for every shipment or trade that we conduct, we're donating to different organizations here in Atlanta. One of them, Love Beyond Walls. We had the pleasure of interviewing Terrence Lester on one of our episodes, and
right.
The one thing that they told us to do when this started was wash your hands and stay home. Well, homeless people don't have either, right? So through his organization and the amazing job that he's doing with a campaign called Love Sinks In, he's been putting all this portable sinks around the cities, and so we're trying to help him raise money, and then also we're trying to supply at least 100,000 masks for the homeless. Those are the couple of things that we've been doing. Everyone else is doing in our team different things with other organizations, but those are the main, more corporate ones that we have.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
So share a little bit about how folks can reach out to you either on these initiatives or Vector.
Yeah, they can look us up on our through our webpage, vectorgl.com, and we're going to be launching a new one in a couple more weeks, so we're all very excited about that. The other way of doing it is just reaching out to me directly on my email. It's Enrique, ENRIQUE.alvarez, ALVAREZ @vectorgl.com. Or they can just go to our Instagram as well and look us up that way.
They can also
Great.
look up Chica's Instagram.
Yes.
They can
with the mascot.
Well, Chica has way more fans than we do, but yes.
Yes, that's right.
So to clue the audience in there, Chica is Vector's mascot. And what kind of dog is that, Enrique? Chica.
She's an Australian Labradoodle, and she's basically our dog. But yeah,
Lots of personality. Love it. All right. So so much to cover, so little time. What a great, gosh, hours flown right past. Jeremy, thanks so much for what you and the Matter team are doing. Such critical work, noble mission. And y'all were doing that before the pandemic environment. And now the need is, as you put it, is even greater. And the challenges are even greater. So really appreciate what you do. Hopefully you hear from some of our listeners, and we look forward to bringing you back on the program maybe later in the year to kind of get an update on what you and the Matter team have been able to get accomplished. Jeremy Newhouse, Senior Vice President of Operations for Matter. Thanks so much, Jeremy.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. All right. And
Thank
of
you,
course,
Jeremy.
we couldn't do this without the Vector team. We love our Logistics with Purpose series. It's just, not to be cheesy, but it is the heart and soul of why we love supply chain, why global supply chain is so important, and all the talented people that make things happen in the industry. So I want to thank Enrique Alvarez, of course, Managing Director with Vector Global Logistics, and his colleague, Elisa Rodriguez, also with Vector. Great to see you both once again.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
Jeremy.
Thanks,
You bet.
Greg. Thanks, Jeremy.
Great to see you. All right, Greg, man, I'm scared to ask you your one key takeaway because it might be a 42-minute takeaway. But
amazingly, it's a very simple one. And I think the discovery that we've had here, especially considering Jeremy's upbringing and how that has manifested itself in what Matter does, is that, like Enrique and the folks at Vector Logistics and so many of the folks that we interview, Terrence, of course, with Love Beyond Walls, it's not giving forward is not what they do. It's who they are. It is a giving spirit. It is a part of their being. It is a part not only of their core values and worldview, it's just an unstoppable force within people to give. It's just who they are.
Yeah.
So that comes through loud and clear, in talking to Jeremy.
That's right. These are people that are driving change, and come with that comes the need to drive even more tougher change, but it's got to happen, and supply chain is going to lead. And on that note, we invite all of our listeners, hey, if you like this conversation, it makes my week for sure. Check out our other programming at supplychainradio.com. Check us out on our podcast, wherever you get yours from. We've got some tough weeks and months ahead, undoubtedly, from a variety of perspectives. But again, this is what we're called to do. So with that said, we look forward to you rejoining us for future programming. Rest assured, much brighter days for all lie ahead. So on that note, Scott Luton and Greg White signing off. We look forward to y'all joining us again on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.